You'd think lawyers would have more sense, Dr. Rogerson. The boy won't be needed before lunch.
He should never have been called at all.
And who else could the defence call?
Better send him to the restaurant, Mr. Farah.
Yes, I suppose so. There you are, Ashley. Something for you to spend downstairs. Oh, off you go now.
At the centre of this week's case is a West Indian boy called Ashley Lyle, who is currently in the care of the Fulchester Social Services Department. Jake Denver is charged with stealing and harbouring Ashley Lyle, the son of Agnes Lyle, with whom he lives. Agnes Lyle is charged with harbouring her own son. The jury in this trial has been selected from members of the public, whose names appear on the electoral register and who are eligible for jury service.
Frederick Groves, please.
They're getting on with it at any rate.
What is your full name and address?
Frederick Charles Groves, 1 Lansbury House, Northside.
Now, you were employed at that address as a caretaker by Fulchester County Council,
I
are you
am,
not?
and I've been this last 20 years.
Lansbury House is a block of council flats?
It is.
Do you know the accused Jake Denver and Agnes Lyle?
I say. He first come to live at number 12 2 years ago with his sister and her kids. If it was his sister. You can never tell these days.
And when did you come to know Agnes Lyle?
Well, when sister moved out last year. First, a lady cousin moved in with him with her kids. Well, at least cousins, what she said she were. Then she skips and Lyle woman, she moved in with her kid. That'll be last September.
September 1975?
Yeah, that's right. You know, I don't know how council stands for it. There's decent families crying out for them flats.
Just answer the questions, please. Now, you know Agnes Lyle has a son.
Of course. Ashley. Half of Fulchester knows that. Been in all papers, hasn't he? I cut this bit out at Gazette.
No, you mustn't tell us about the newspaper, Mr. Groves. How well did you know Ashley Lyle personally?
Too well. I'd cause to speak to him every other day nearly. Fighting to the lads it's all way and screaming upstairs. What can you expect? Under welfare, weren't he?
Were you informed by the council that Ashley was being supervised by a social worker?
Sort of. Mr. Farah, welfare man, he started visiting very first day a Lyle woman moved in. So I stopped him and I asked him straight. Well, I'm responsible for what goes on in them flats.
Quite. Did Mr. Farah tell you why he was supervising Ashley?
Well, of course. She wasn't sending her son to school, was she? I never saw him go neither, not once.
Were you actually present when Mr. Farah, the social worker, took Ashley Lyle away from his home at Lansbury House?
Yeah, I was there. Not much I miss it, that house. Well, it's my job. That would be last January.
The 15th of January?
Yeah, thereabouts. Could be. Mr. Farah, he come along in a taxi with a nurse lady.
Did he tell you where he was taking Ashley?
Well, of course, you to a special school at country.
So, from the middle of January, Ashley Lyle was no longer in residence at Lansbury House, but at a home in the country.
That's right. And didn't I notice difference?
Now, Mr. Groves, when did you next see Ashley Lyle?
Well, March the 13th, like I said in my statement.
The members of the jury haven't read your statement, Mr. Groves. Would you tell them what happened on the 13th of March?
Well, it all started on 12th, really.
Oh, very well. Tell us what happened starting on the 12th.
Well, that were a Friday, and Mrs. Green, that's her in number 20, she's above them in number 12. She got away for the night, and I were looking after her budgie.
Yes, go on.
Well, about 8 o'clock on Friday night, I were up there with budgie like, and then I heard this hollering down below, because ceilings is very thin, and it were him. Denver hollering at a kid, and kid were hollering back and shouting, no, 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 just like that. And then Lyle woman, she joins in. I couldn't tell what they were saying because, well, their lot, they've got a funny way of talking.
Did you recognize the child's voice?
Of course. It was Ashley, I thought. And then I thought again, well, he's gone away permanent. It must be some other kid like, so I didn't think no more on it until on Saturday.
The following day, the 13th?
That's right, yeah. Well, I were up in Mrs. Green's place again, and I were hanging Budgie's cage out on balcony like it being a nice day, and I saw Ashley, he were playing down below on the balcony behind some sheets that were hung up like, and he were choking hot wall. And she come out and she cuffed him one, and she dragged him inside hollering. And he didn't half holler, I'll tell you.
And what did you do then?
Well, first off, I had a little think. And what I thought were, that kid's no right to be there. Mr. Farah told me as he were going away permanent. Did no right to be keeping that kid there at home.
But did you hear or see anything to make you think that he was being kept there?
Well, of course, there was amount of hollering that were going on. So I phoned Mr. Farah through town hall, of course, because I'm responsible to council.
So, you telephoned Mr. Farah?
Yes.
And did Mr. Farah come to Lansbury House shortly afterwards?
Yes.
What happened then?
Well, then, I don't rightly know, because he told me to keep out on it and not to do with me. Well, it was cheek considering. So later I asked Mrs. Green, and she said to me that...
You mustn't tell us what your Mrs. Green told you.
Well, she's not my Mrs. Green. Now, don't get me wrong, sir. But I was responsible for what goes on in that building. And what were they doing with that kiddie there?
Indeed, Mr. Groves. That is exactly what the jury must decide. Wait there, please.
Mr. Groves, are you a married man?
Was. My wife's dead. Gone.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I dare say you are also a father.
Yes, I am.
Oh, did you never spank or scold your children?
Yes, when they were little.
How old is Ashley Lyle?
Ashley? About 8.
Yes, a little boy. Did your children not protest or cry out when you chastised them?
Yes.
I dare say they misbehaved themselves and got into fights sometimes.
Yes. Well, what of it?
Well, you tell me, Mr. Groves. What is so different about the behaviour of the defendants towards their child, Ashley Lyle, that you should make so much of it in your evidence?
Well, it weren't same.
Well, in what way?
Well, I mean, that night on Friday he was screaming, no, no, no.
My own son does as much in the bath every night, Mr. Groves. I suggest that what you saw or heard at number 12 Lansbury House on the 12th and 13th of March was nothing more than the defendants behaving like normal parents.
They're not even married.
Well, that doesn't prevent them from being exemplary parents.
You don't have to live with them. I tell you, they're different.
Yes, you made it clear to my learned friend how different you thought the defendants were. You referred to their lot, their way different. They got a funny way of talking. Well, who exactly are they?
Them.
Well, simply the accused, or what?
Coloured people, you know.
No, I don't know, Mr. Groves. West Indians, perhaps. They're different.
Well, of course. Well, the way they talk and go about and their way of carrying on. Of course.
You don't quite approve of that, do you?
Really, Your Honour.
Yes, if you have a point to make, Mrs. Forrest, make it.
I'm obliged, Your Honour. Mr. Groves, was there not an occasion when you had a violent argument with Jakes at Denver?
Argument?
Well, I can refresh your memory if you wish.
Well, We had a bit of a tiff last Christmas, yeah.
As I understand it, you asked the defendant to turn his record player down last Boxing Night.
I did. All this raggy music they go in for, terrible racket. And he told me as it were no business of mine interfering as it were Christmas. And I said, I'm only doing me job, Christmas and all Christmas, because I'm responsible for keeping a orderly building there, you know.
Quite. But you also said to him, did you not, words to the effect, you coloured blokes are nothing but trouble. They ought to send you back home. You're on oath, you know.
Well, I could have. I suppose I could have said something like that, yeah, but... Well, he worked me up.
Yes, indeed, Mr. Groves. The whole of your evidence here today has been motivated by prejudice and spite, hasn't it?
No. He told me to sod off. And then he poked me one in my chest here. And me, an old man, and I thought it, oh, well, it's not right.
Thank you, Mr. Groves.
I have no further questions, Your Honour. Paul Farah, please.
Paul Farah, please.
How long have you been a qualified practicing social worker, Mr. Farah?
16 years, 5 in my present senior position.
Is one of your clients, as I believe you call them, Ashley Lyle, son of the accused Agnes Lyle?
Yes, though I regard Miss Lyle as a client too.
Ah, yes. Under the provision of a recent interim care order confirmed by this court, your department is now wholly responsible for the child's welfare.
That's right.
So, to all intents and purposes, you are, at present, the boy's legal parent or guardian.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Farah, will you very briefly tell the jury how Ashley Lyle came to be your client and subsequently came into your care under an interim court order?
Certainly. Ashley seems to have had learning and behavioral difficulties when he first started primary school in September 1973.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the file refers to restlessness, lack of concentration, and this appears to have unsettled the other pupils too. At first, his teachers put it down to the usual language barrier. A good many immigrant children have this problem. Ashley was born here, of course, but his mother, Miss Agnes Lyle, came originally from St. Lucia. So
That's one of the Windward Islands in the Caribbean, is it not?
Yes. So from March to September 1974, Ashley attended special language classes for immigrants 2 days a week. But he made little progress, and he became increasingly withdrawn at school.
What do you mean by that?
Withdrawn? Well, he wouldn't or couldn't play with the other children, take part in activities, even school outings, that sort of thing.
I see. Go on, please.
In December 1974, at the suggestion of his teacher and headmaster, and with the full agreement of his mother, he was seen by the school's medical officer and an educational psychologist who gave him an intelligence test which indicated an IQ of 68. As a result of this, it was felt that he might benefit by being placed in an ESN school. He began attending...
A school for the educationally subnormal?
Yes, Your Honour. A child with an IQ of 70 is usually reckoned to be suitable for education at an ESN school.
How many children go to these schools?
I don't know the exact figures. The DES publishes them.
I have them here, Your Honour. 88,943. But that includes mentally handicapped children, the severely subnormal.
Thank you, Mrs. Forrest. Now, an education authority has a statutory duty to ascertain what children require special education, does it not?
Yes, Your Honour.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Farah. Please continue.
Ashley began attending Mill Heath ESN school in January 1975, again with the complete agreement of his mother. But he soon started to play truant, and it emerged that Miss Lyle, the accused, was doing little to remedy this. In fact, she arranged for him to stay with his grandmother while she went out to work. So finally, in April 1975, she was served with a school attendance order.
An education authority also has the statutory duty in law to see that the child attends school or is suitably educated.
That's right.
So, Miss Lyle was served with a school attendance order requiring her to send Ashley to Mill Heath School.
Yes, and she appealed against this.
Which was her right.
Oh, yes. She changed her mind about Mill Heath School, and she wanted Ashley readmitted to a normal school. But After a lot of discussion, this was considered impracticable. It was a question of resources, really.
Why resources?
Well, ordinary primary schools in Fulchester simply aren't equipped to deal with children with special problems. They haven't the staff or the facilities. There wasn't a school that would take him. It's as simple as that.
Did Miss Lyle accept that?
No. And she continued to keep her son away from Mill Heath School.
And the Education Authority eventually applied for a supervision order from this court?
Eventually, yes. It was granted in September 1975, and I became the social worker responsible for Miss Lyle and her son under that order.
Mr. Farah, what was your professional opinion of Miss Lyle as a mother?
Well, Your Honour, as an unmarried mother in difficult circumstances, she certainly coped. The child was well fed, well clothed, well cared for.
Thanks for nothing.
Mr. Denver, you will refrain from interrupting. You will have an opportunity of speaking later.
Please carry on, Mr. Farah.
My first duty was to see that Ashley continued his education in a suitable school. We arranged for him to make a fresh start at another ESN school, Westdown, and I did my best to convince Miss Lyle that this was the most sensible course. I pointed out to her that the longer we delayed Ashley's education, the longer would be the period before he could be returned to a normal school. In fact, delay might make that altogether impossible.
Was your advice taken?
No. She preferred Jakes Denver's advice to mine, and she continued to keep him away from school.
The accused Denver participated in your discussions with Miss Lyle?
Yes. He monopolized them. Man to man, Mr. Welfare, as he put it. She'd gone to live with him just prior to the supervision order. He was her common-law husband, I suppose.
Did the liaison have your professional approval?
In many ways, it made for a better, more stable family life. But Mr. Denver had certain fixed ideas about the position of immigrants in our society. You're rubber stamping our kids second class, Mr. Welfare. That came up every time. Unfortunately, he convinced Miss Lyle, no matter how often I showed him he was wrong.
What were their plans for the boy?
That was never made quite clear. Some big public demonstration by which the boy would be magically put back into a normal school.
Yes, Denver wrote to the Fulchester Gazette in December 1975, and they printed this article, did they not?
Yes, I was furious.
Now, did you consider the child to be at risk?
Indeed he was. He became extremely withdrawn. So, very reluctantly, my colleagues and I decided to apply for an interim care order, which was granted and which the Crown Court confirmed on the 12th of January 1976, despite an appeal from Miss Lyle.
And that is the order now in force, granting you legal custody of the child?
Yes. We simply want to take the pressure off the child for a while.
Of course. What arrangements did you make for the child as his legal guardian?
We found a place for him at Grange House Residential ESN School. That's a converted manor house some miles from Fulchester.
And that's where he is at the present time?
Yes.
Has Miss Lyle been allowed regular visits to her son?
Of course. We're trying to help them both.
Yes. Now then, Mr. Farah, did Miss Lyle and Jakes Denver visit Ashley at Grange House on the afternoon of the 12th of March, 1976?
I arranged a visit for them. I understand they went as arranged.
Did anything occur as a result of that visit?
I'm afraid it did. At about 6 that evening, I had a phone call from one of the house parents at Grange House School to say that Ashley had gone missing after his mother's visit. I went straight down to Denver's flat at Lansbury House.
Who was there?
They were, the two accused. They said that they hadn't seen Ashley since they left Grange House. The disappearance seemed to upset them, naturally. Denver insisted that I search the flat, which I did, and I found nothing.
Well, then what did you do?
Well, I made a list of all the places they thought Ashley might have gone to, and I took it to the police. Grange House had already informed the local station.
But the police didn't find the boy that day, did they?
No. My colleagues and I were worried sick. I didn't sleep at all that night. But then the next morning...
A Saturday, the 13th of March?
Yes. I had a phone call from a Mr. Groves.
The caretaker at Lansbury House?
Yes. He said that he'd seen Ashley in Denver's flat. I dashed round there straight away.
And who was there this time?
Miss Lyle opened the door to me. I think she thought I was the milkman. Anyway, I told her that Ashley had been seen in the flat. I reminded her of my legal position, and I warned her that the police might take a very serious view of the matter.
What did she say to that?
Nothing. She began crying, and she went back into the flat. I followed her, and she showed me into a room where Denver was lying asleep and Ashley was sitting on a camp bed.
Go on, please.
Denver woke up, very confused, rather violent. He grabbed me by the arm and he began shouting at Miss Lyle in some language or dialect that I didn't understand. She replied in the same way, and he quietened down a bit. Then Ashley began to cry, and Denver hit him, smacked him, and he went very quiet.
Did you ask them to explain how Ashley came to be there?
Yes, they made no reply. I pointed out to them that in the absence of any explanation, I could only conclude that they had taken him from Grange House. They still made no reply.
I see. Did they say nothing else?
Well, Miss Lyle spoke to her son. I think Denver called me a zombie.
What did you do with the child?
I asked Miss Lyle to get him dressed, and I took him back to Grange House, where he's been ever since.
How was the child after all this?
Tense. Shut up in himself, unapproachable. I still haven't managed to get his account of what happened.
Thank you, Mr. Farah.
Mr. Farah, as his legal guardian, how often do you see the defendant's son?
Once every 10 days.
Only once every 10 days? Well, tell me, how many other clients do you have?
With the greatest respect, Your Honour, I cannot see how this can be relevant.
Yes, what is the point of this, Mrs. Forrest?
Your Honour, there are two issues in this case. One is how the boy's stay at the school under a care order was affecting him. The other is what the two accused believed was the effect on the boy of his stay at the school. I shall, of course, defend my clients on the straight issue of fact, but I should like the opportunity to show that they believe the boy was actually being harmed by his stay at the school, even if they were mistaken in that belief. My case is that it was an honest mistake, and from their particular point of view, one made on reasonable grounds.
I see. Your defense is that the accused thought the child was in imminent danger of some kind.
Psychological danger, Your Honour. Their own experience and observation of the boy led them to believe that he had been wrongly tested as educationally subnormal, and that his continued presence in an ESN school, especially a residential one, endangered his future mental development.
Your Honour, there can be no question of danger. A Crown Court has already decided what is best and safest for the child by granting a care order to the Social Services Department.
Ah, but what a judge decides in another court is not binding on this jury, Mr. Penrose. I mean, there's a world of difference between deciding a thing is reasonable and deciding whether another party is capable of understanding your reasons, particularly when there's cultural differences here.
But my learned friend would then be asking the jury to say that the unreasonable was reasonable.
No, she'd be seeking to show that the defendants were reasonably unreasonable, which I consider to be a proper matter for this jury to consider. Mrs. Forrest?
The cases in Fulchester are fictitious. Join us again tomorrow when the Queen against Denver and Lyle will be resumed in the Crown Court. Agnes Lyle is accused of helping her co-defendant, Jakes Denver, to steal her own son, Ashley, who was in the care of the Social Services Department under an interim care order. Agnes Lyle is also accused of harbouring her own son. The jury in this trial has been selected from members of the public, whose names appeared on the electoral register and who are eligible for jury service. The case continues with the cross-examination of Ashley Lyle's social worker, Paul Farah.
Mr. Farah, you are the boy's legal guardian, are you not, in loco parentis?
Legally, the local authority are the guardians. I am the paid servant of that authority, who are the elected servants of the community as a whole.
Paid servant. You mean you do it for money rather than love?
No, social work is my vocation as well as my living.
You are at present endeavouring to be both mother and father to this boy. How well do you know him?
I know Ashley pretty well by now.
Oh, for example, or what is his favourite food, TV programme, football club?
As to that, I couldn't honestly say.
When is his birthday?
I don't know without checking my file. He's 8.
9, last month, in point of fact. He spent the first 6 years of his life largely in the care of his maternal grandmother.
I believe so.
You believe so? But you have never met his grandmother, have you?
No?
That's her over there. You know she came from St. Lucia originally, as did the accused, Agnes Lyle.
Yes?
The grandmother speaks St. Lucian patois to her children and grandchildren, and the family maintain many of their old traditions, do they not?
So I understand.
Do you understand that patois, or those traditions?
I only wish I had the time.
Just a moment, Mrs. Forrest. What is this patois?
St. Lucia was colonized by the French, Your Honor.
Oh, the patois is vernacular French, therefore.
Exactly, Your Honor. So, Mr. Farah, you don't speak or understand the patois.
My job is to integrate people into this society.
Which is a multiracial society. Even the law now acknowledges that. Many of those we call immigrants, like little Ashley Lyle, were born here. Your job can no longer be a matter of reducing these people to the safe monotony of sameness, can it?
It's easy to talk.
Well, Agnes Lyle will say that in his own family her son was a happy, creative, outgoing little boy before he went to the ESN school. Not at all the withdrawn, uncooperative child you describe.
His behavior elsewhere does not support that.
You told my learned friend Miss Lyle was a good mother.
I said she coped.
You approved of Miss Lyle going to live with Jake Denver at 12 Lansbury House. It was good for her and the boy, wasn't it?
Only up to a point. His influence on the boy's education was disastrous.
Yes, well, we'll come to that in a moment. The point is, Mr. Farah, it was only the disagreement with the education authorities that brought Agnes Lyle's son into your care, wasn't it?
Yes, but my department was bound to accept their expert advice.
Oh, why? Educationalists can make mistakes, surely. According to your evidence, one day Ashley Lyle was given one test by one psychologist. Who was that, incidentally?
It's not mentioned in my files.
Oh, one psychologist, unnamed. Well, why should any parent accept such an arbitrary decision as final and irrevocable?
Miss Agnes Lyle accepted that decision herself originally.
Yes, but after actual experience of an ESN school, she changed her mind, as she was fully entitled to do. She was also entitled to appeal to the Secretary of State for Education, but she says she was not informed of that fact. Is that correct?
I don't know. I wasn't concerned with the case at that time. That was a matter for the Education Department.
But it's your business to know now, surely.
My time is limited by my caseload. I'm a busy man. Heavens above, the education boys know their own job. In practice, departments tend to accept the expert advice and opinions of other departments.
You mean you tend to ignore the suggestions of mere lay members of the public, like the accused?
Look, the court, even the Crown Court, accepted that advice too.
Oh, it appears that everyone accepted that advice, except Miss Lyle. She preferred Jake Denver's advice, you say?
Unfortunately, yes.
You mention Mr. Denver is a man who feels strongly about the rights of so-called immigrants, or rather the lack of them. He felt that Ashley had been discriminated against, did he not? And he told you so.
Yes, the boy was just another victim of the big white carve-up. I tried to show him what nonsense this was. I have been at great pains to explain everything to them.
Yes, but you've always handled the situation as delicately as you can.
I've tried, Your Honour. I've tried to be objective and unbiased. I took him through that file step by step. I showed them the real situation.
The real situation, Mr. Farah? Well, what is that? Would it surprise you to know that the percentage of immigrant children in ESN schools in Fulchester was 39% 3 years ago?
Yes, the situation has improved lately.
Those are the latest available figures, Mr. Farah. What is the percentage of immigrant children in all schools in Fulchester?
I think it's 12%.
Precisely. A black child is 3 times more likely to be sent to an ESN school than a white child. Can you draw any conclusions about comparative racial intelligence from that?
Certainly not. As I understand it, race has very little to do with intelligence.
Indeed. So in the circumstances, Jake Denver was quite right to suspect that Ashley had been discriminated against, was he not?
No! From all the available evidence in Ashley's particular case, no.
Well, let us now turn to the events of the 12th of March. A house parent at Grange House School for the Educationally Subnormal rang you to say Ashley Lyle was missing after a visit from the defendants. You saw them at their flat, but they said they knew nothing about his disappearance?
Yes?
The boy was missing all that night and the following morning.
Yes.
On Saturday, 13th of March, acting on information received from Mr. Groves, the caretaker, you went to the accused's flat at Lansbury House, where Miss Lyle opened the door to you.
That's right.
What precisely did you say to her?
I told her that Ashley had been seen in the flat. I reminded her of my legal position, and I warned her that the police might take a very poor view of the situation.
Well, why mention the police?
Well, the accused hadn't told me about Ashley being in the flat. Concealing him would have been an offence.
Well, what reason did you have to think that they were concealing him?
But the circumstances seemed suspicious.
Seemed, Mr. Farah. But you never even asked Miss Lyle whether Ashley was in the flat.
No, I didn't, and she never offered any explanation.
You never gave her the opportunity, did you? Why mention the police like that? Is that what you call delicate and unbiased handling?
I told you the police had already been informed.
My client says you were very angry with her. You bullied her, didn't you?
I was angry, and with reason. I'd spent a whole night worrying about that boy.
Then it's hardly surprising Miss Lyle didn't speak to you, is it? Why use these shock tactics?
You're forgetting about Denver. I already knew he was a difficult and obstinate character.
Oh, what grounds have you for saying that?
Well, he'd already dragged the press into this business once and made no end of trouble for everyone, including the boy.
You were prejudiced against them before you knew any of the circumstances surrounding this boy's disappearance, and of course they knew it.
No, I was not. That's nonsense.
Let us consider what actually happened in the flat. You followed Miss Lyle into a room where Denver lay asleep and the boy was sitting on a camp bed?
Yes.
And he began to cry, didn't he?
Yes.
He wasn't pleased to see you, his legal guardian, was he?
Possibly not.
He wasn't under any restraint at the time.
No?
You say Denver woke up suddenly and grabbed your arm.
Yes.
Well, an understandable reaction when you find a strange man in your bedroom at 8:30 in the morning, is it not?
Perhaps. I thought it was unnecessarily aggressive.
Miss Lyle thought as much about you. The defendants then exchanged some words in patois, it seems.
It must have been patois, yes.
And the child, of course, was crying loudly.
Very loudly.
Understandably. But understandable, too, that Mr. Denver should calm him with a short, sharp slap.
It didn't look medicinal.
Then, at long last, you asked the accused to explain the boy's presence in the flat. But Denver refused, didn't he? And the reason he gave, was it not, was that he wasn't saying anything without a solicitor?
Yes. Denver knows his way around. He's a canny one.
But you yourself had already threatened Miss Lyle with the law.
I did not threaten her.
You mentioned the police. She thought it was a threat. I suggest that Denver's reaction was quite appropriate in the circumstances, was it not?
It was true to form, certainly.
You say you still haven't managed to get the child's version of these events. Well, why is that?
He won't speak about it.
He won't speak about it to you.
He won't confide in anyone. He hardly talks at all.
Yeah, the jury will have an opportunity of judging that for themselves. Has the boy's condition improved since he was returned to the school?
It hasn't deteriorated.
Therefore, it hasn't improved. His condition is exactly the same after 10 months of so-called specialized treatment. Silent, withdrawn, unapproachable. Mr. Farah, I suggest to you that if the boy remains at this ESN school, his education and mental development are in danger of being arrested for good.
No. No, he is receiving the best available care.
Dr. Rogerson, please.
How long have you been an educational psychologist, Dr. Rogerson?
20 years, and I was a teacher before that.
Ashley Lyle, the son of the accused Agnes Lyle, is one of your pupils at Grange House Residential School for the Educationally Subnormal?
He is.
And did the defendants Denver and Lyle visit Grange House on the afternoon of the 12th of March, 1976?
Yes.
Can you recall what occurred?
Very clearly. They drove down to see me at about 4 o'clock.
The school's some distance from Fulchester.
20 miles. They came to see me about a series of tests and observations I wanted to do on Ashley. I tried to explain, but they weren't very cooperative, particularly Mr. Denver.
How do you mean they weren't cooperative?
Mr. Denver's got a bee in his bonnet about white authoritarian attitudes, with some justification. But he does tend to see everything as a kind of ethnic trap.
I see. Go on, please.
I went through the test with Miss Lyle and Mr. Denver and tried to explain how they would help us to decide what was best for Ashley.
Dr. Rogerson, when you say tests, are you referring to IQ, intelligence tests?
Oh, I include those, Your Honour. Nowadays, IQ tests form only part of a series of tests and observations which are designed to show a child's needs and abilities. That is to say, Testing tries to take into account both genetic and environmental factors. Very few psychologists see IQ as an absolute criterion of mental ability.
Yes, most interesting.
So, you tried unsuccessfully to explain these tests to the defendants.
Yes. Then I brought Ashley in so we could explain to him together.
Was that any more successful?
Not really. He was more distracted than usual.
What happened after these two interviews?
I thought they should have some time alone together, so I left them in my consulting room where they could be more private. I went to the general office to get some files and then waited in the corridor near the room. Miss Lyle and Mr. Denver came out sometime afterwards. They seemed agitated. I asked them if anything was wrong, but they rushed away without explaining. Then I returned to the consulting room and found Ashley gone and the window wide open. I dashed over to the window in time to see Mr. Denver's van disappear down the drive at an alarming speed.
Really?
A search of the building and the grounds revealed that the child was missing from school.
Dr. Rogerson, precisely what, in layman's terms, are Ashley Lyle's problems?
Yes, try and spare us as much technical jargon as possible, Dr. Rogerson.
Of course, Your Honour. Quite simply, Ashley has difficulty in being educated in a normal classroom situation. This is partly due to his IQ. Ashley was originally diagnosed as 68, but I do think he could be higher, up to 10 points. That is why I intend to give him a new series of tests when he's settled down and his English has improved, which is another part of his problem. His early language skills were learned from his grandmother, who prefers to speak only St. Lucian patois. This set him apart from his peers, classmates, almost everyone, and presented him with an emotional problem, which in turn became a further educational problem. This is the vicious circle we are trying to break at Grange House with intensive residential care.
Well, thank you, Dr. Rogerson. Admirably concise. In your professional opinion, is Grange House School at present a suitable and reasonable place for this child to continue his education?
In all the circumstances, yes. The residential care is excellent, and we have a system of continuous assessment in small teaching groups. Ashley's prospects are very good.
Is the child's mental and educational development in any danger of being impaired at all by his residence at Grange House?
Good heavens, no.
Thank you.
Dr. Rogerson, you obviously attach great importance to the influence of Ashley's grandmother, with whom he spoke St. Lucian patois.
Yes.
Do you understand the patois or its associated culture?
I'm afraid not. It's a struggle keeping up with one's own culture.
Have you managed, for instance, to get the boy's account of the events in this case?
He won't talk about them.
Your relationship with the boy is hardly a close one, then?
Not yet.
Did most of the other teachers, social workers and psychologists with whom this child has come in contact during the past 3 years come from the white middle-class culture that you and I share?
Inevitably.
Well, it wouldn't be surprising, therefore, if Ashley Lyle or his mother or Denver were hostile to the world of school and educationalists.
I'm quite sure they are hostile. That's Ashley's biggest problem at the moment.
What is the percentage of so-called immigrants at Grange House School?
25%.
Oh, appreciably higher than the percentage of immigrant pupils in normal schools.
Yes.
In other words, Jakes Denver is justified in regarding the school system as, oh, what was your elegant phrase? An ethnic trap?
Not justified. Mr. Farah and I are engaged in trying to open the trap for Ashley. This is the point of the new series of tests.
But am I right in thinking that all the available tests are biased against children who do not speak English as their mother tongue?
Yes, some more than others.
So there is some controversy about the measurement of intelligence.
Discussion, not controversy.
Then that test, that one unnamed psychologist gave to Ashley Lyle 2.5 years ago. Do you happen to know who it was, by the way?
I can't remember offhand.
Then that test has no scientific validity.
Oh, it has. It's still a fair indication of his ability to be taught in a normal school system.
But you just now told my learned friend that this unnamed psychologist could have got the boy's IQ wrong by some 10 points.
He might have done. I don't know yet.
But if he did, Ashley would no longer be ESN. He would no longer need the special requirements of a school like Grange House, would he?
Oh, yes, he would. He's still in need of intensive remedial education.
But surely it must be harmful for a non-ESN child to go to any ESN school, especially a residential one.
Not where there is the opportunity to be returned to the normal school system.
How many children are returned?
About 3%.
Only 3%, Dr. Rogers.
Of course. Most of our pupils will always be ESN. That is why there are ESN schools.
You would agree that many parents find the ESN designation a social stigma on their child.
It's nonsense, but some do.
Then would you not agree, in retrospect, that Miss Lyle had good cause to argue, to fight for her son's removal from an ESN school?
I cannot give opinions in retrospect.
Miss Lyle will say that the original test and consultation was a most hurried, unsettling affair, both for her and her son.
Well, with only one psychologist to every 30 schools, it could happen.
Is every child assigned to an ESN school given one hasty, indifferent test?
Of course not. In fact, last year we laid down new guidelines for tests.
But this was long after Ashley Lyle was tested.
Obviously. I was not involved in the original test.
No, those vital first links in this disastrous chain of events cannot be examined here today. Those who forged them are not present. All we have are you and Mr. Farah, deftly sweeping away the mess they left behind.
The system is improving all the time. My main task is to clear up the mess, as you call it. That is the purpose of the new series of tests.
But can you guarantee that they will be any more accurate than the original test?
Yes. We only use those parts of the test we consider culturally fair and appropriate, in conjunction with other sources of information, such as controlled interview techniques.
What is Ashley Lyle's condition now?
Not good. He's very uncommunicative. But I think we could help him at Grange House. I repeat, his prospects are good.
I put it to you, Dr. Rogerson, that you have, in fact, compounded the earlier mistakes and omissions of your colleagues by accepting their dubious assessment and separating Ashley from his mother and installing him in an establishment which can only do him irreparable harm.
No, really, this is nonsense.
Now, a few more questions relating to the 12th of March, 1976. You told counsel for the prosecution that during your interviews with the defendants, they were uncooperative. Well, do you not accept that they may have been distressed? After all, it's not pleasant to have one's child taken away.
I am working for the return of this child to his family. They were uncooperative, particularly Mr. Denver.
Did the accused at any time mention or suggest that they would take the child away?
No, but they were left alone with him for 15 minutes.
Well, presumably because you trusted them, Dr. Rogerson.
At the time, perhaps.
Did either of the defendants bully or scold the boy?
No, but they are an old-fashioned word, strict.
You say you saw Denver's van driving away at speed. But you didn't see either of them put Ashley into it, did you?
No.
Or see Ashley climb in voluntarily?
No.
Do your pupils never run away?
They're at Grange House to face up to their special difficulties. It's not surprising if they run away from them occasionally. Who doesn't?
I suggest to you that that was, in fact, what Ashley Lyle did on the 12th of March.
I doubt that, very much.
Unless you have any questions, Your Honor, that is the case for the prosecution.
Your Honor, I call the defendant, Jakes Tedder Denver. You are Jakes Tedder Denver of 12 Lansbury House, North Side, Portchester.
Yeah, right.
Tedder, as in the late Lord Tedder.
Yeah, my father was in the Air Force during the war. Much good it did him.
So you were born in England?
Yeah, that's right. I'm British, 100%.
What is your trade or profession?
Oh, carpenter, unemployed. One of the many.
Are you a friend of Agnes Lyle?
Friend? Look, she lives with me. I want to marry her.
Has she agreed to that?
She's considering.
Do you know her son, Ashley?
Yeah, I'm his Uncle Jack, his new papa.
Do you get on well with him?
Oh, why? I like kids and they like me.
They came to live with you at about the time Ashley began to be supervised by his social worker, Mr. Farah, didn't they?
Yeah, exactly the time. Look, we just wanted to give him a real home, a better chance, you know.
How did the boy seem to you?
No different from any other kid. Great little guy. but kind of jumpy with all the worry over him, especially when that Mr. Welfare came round.
You've had considerable experience with children as a voluntary youth worker, haven't you?
Yeah. I help run the Northside Carib Club. I know about black kids in Fulchester. Little Ash ain't the only one to get grinded down.
Is that why you wrote a letter to the Fulchester Gazette to encourage them to print this article?
Yeah, right. Look, what we got here is something bigger than school, bigger than welfare, bigger than Ashley even. Look, what we got here is discrimination.
Mr. Denver,
discrimination, whether they like it or not.
Your views on these matters may attract a certain amount of sympathy, but this is not the proper place in which to air them. You are here to give evidence. And from now on, you will confine yourself to answering counsel's questions.
The cases in Fulchester are fictitious. Join us tomorrow when the Queen against Denver and Lyle will be concluded in the Crown Court. Jakes Denver is accused of stealing and harbouring Ashley Lyle, the son of his girlfriend Agnes Lyle. She herself is accused of harbouring her own son. At the time of the alleged offence, the child was in the care of the local authority. The jury in this trial has been selected from members of the public, whose names appear on the electoral register and who are eligible for jury service. Jakes Denver is in the witness box giving evidence.
How did you feel about this interim care order that was placed on Ashley in January 1976?
Well, when our appeal against it went down, that rocked me. And it squashed my Agnes flat. You see, with a care order, they got you tight. I told Agnes we got to ride it their way for a while now, because, well, they could take little Ash for good.
And Mr. Farah took Ashley away to Grange House Residential School. Did the boy go calmly?
You got to be joking. I had to bring my hand to him before he went. I didn't much like it, but look, a boy has to behave whatever is trouble.
Did Ashley settle down at Grange House?
Settle down? Jesus, man. He was settled so deep he was like a dead boy, a zombie.
Mr. Denver, please watch your language.
I'm sorry.
Did you or Miss Lyle discuss this with Dr. Rogerson, the psychologist at Grange House?
Oh, she don't discuss, she teaches. You either get taught or you argue. Me, I argued, but Agnes, well, Dr. Rogerson freezes her up.
Do you remember going to see Ashley at Grange House on the 12th of March, 1976?
Yeah, I'd never forget it.
Please tell the jury what happened during and after that visit.
Yeah, sure. Look, and this is how it really was, and never mind what anyone else says. We went to see that lady psychologist there. She had some kind of new experiment she was putting on the kid. You see, they don't just kick you when you're down. Oh, no, they talk about it first.
Try to confine yourself to what actually happened. Tell us about the interview.
Well, I'm telling you. That Dr. Rogers, so she went rabbiting about what she was or wasn't doing for the kid. I told her straight. There was no way she was going to get through to him. Anyhow, she fetched little Ash in with us. Kid was acting strange, weird-like, wriggling about. One minute cuddling his mama, the next minute pushing her off, pinching hard. Because that kid is no trouble at home. So why, eh? Why suddenly all this weird stuff? It's all that psycho talk and welfare, that's why.
What is your attitude to calling a psychologist to give evidence on your behalf?
I wouldn't call a psychologist if he was the only man on the beach and I was going on for the third time.
Did Dr. Rogerson leave you and Miss Lyle alone with her son?
Yeah. I made him sit down for a bit, and I told him straight to listen to his mama. She told him straight, stuff about behaving and trying hard and thing. I know she didn't believe in what she was saying, but what can she do? Anyway, it wasn't much use. Kids started crying and begging to be took home right away and saying how the school was horrible and they hated him and everything. But all the time, he was worrying Agnes with this cuddling and pinching thing. It was bad, man. Real bad. Then I realized we wasn't much use to the kid just sitting there listening, so I grabbed Agnes and I took her out. I told the kid to sit quiet like, till the doctor come and we'll bring back presents and things for him if he was
Just
good.
one moment. You left the boy alone in the consulting room. Was the window open?
I guess it was on the jar.
Did you speak to Dr. Rogerson again after you left the room?
I must have. I don't remember what. My attention was on Agnes. She was all shook up. My thought was to get her out of there quick and quiet like. 15 minutes later, we were on the bypass at Kingsford, and little Ash pops up in the back.
You're saying he'd hidden in the back of the van?
Yeah, right. And he starts straight in, crying again, begging to be took home like. Of course, Agnes, she can't take it. She starts crying too. So I pulled into to the lay-by like. And my whole van was vibrating. And then I thought, well, it's no good playing it by the book. Eh? It just don't pay. The welfare man and his lot got Agnes in this fix, and he ain't going to be satisfied till she and the kid is all tucked away somewhere in some welfare house, all neat and tidy like. So I put my foot down and I drove back home to Fulchester.
Well, what was your intention precisely?
Oh, I don't know about precisely. All I knew is that I had to get that kid away from there, that's all. Then I had this idea, you see, that if I hid him secret like for a bit, I could frighten Mr. Welfare into seeing how bad the kid really was.
Did you think he was in danger of suffering some psychological damage?
Come again?
Well, did you think his future health and education were at risk?
Yeah, right.
So what did you do?
Well, when I got back home, I hid little Ash in a lock-up shed I had till it was dark and we could take him up to the flat.
And that was where he was when Mr. Farah called on you that evening?
Yeah. We pretended as though we knew nothing like. Well, we had to for little Ash's sake.
Miss Lyle understood your intentions?
I guess so. Oh, she was past taking stuff in. She had it up to here. All she wanted was a kid home and safe like. And there he was. Little Ash got so excited, I had to slap him hard.
But the next morning, Mr. Farah called again and found him, didn't he?
Yeah, sure. The first I knew, he was standing in my bedroom, cool as a cucumber. I nearly gave him one. Well, Agnes told me that he had the police coming round.
This was in Patois?
Yeah, and I told her back to say nothing without a solicitor. You see, I don't trust an angry welfare man. The law goes to his head like whiskey.
Thank you, Mr. Denver.
Yeah, right on.
Mr. Denver, you seriously expect this court to believe that a disturbed, excitable child decided to run away, opened the consulting room window, climbed out, hid in your van, and then remained hidden during a 20-minute drive?
Well, that's the truth.
How did he get into the van?
I must have left the door unlocked.
Very convenient. You told that boy to climb out of the window, put him in your van, and drove away, didn't you?
No.
You had ample time for your plan. You and Miss Lyle were alone in the consulting room with the boy for about 15 minutes.
Yeah, we told him nothing about running away.
You talked about presents and sweets and going home their way.
Well, we meant like in the future, like, okay?
Come now, you deliberately hid him in your shed and in the flat.
Yeah, for the kid's own safety.
His safety? You kept him there by force, did you not?
Look, he ran away from that place, couldn't wait to get out.
2 witnesses say you struck the child that day.
Look, I was being a good father to him, that's all.
You lied to Mr. Farah when he called on the 12th of March.
Yeah, for the kid's own safety.
You even pretended to be upset, Mr.
Look,
Farah
man, we
said.
was upset.
You knew you were breaking the law.
Look, I don't know about no law. I was thinking of Agnes and the kid.
Oh, really? Then why did you advise Miss Lyle to refuse to talk to Mr. Farah without a solicitor?
Look, he started the law business. He threatened my Agnes.
Mr. Farah was simply exercising his legal rights.
Oh, sure. That's what he'd been doing all along. And look what's happened. He's turned a normal kid into some kind of weird boy.
If you're so certain, why haven't you allowed learned counsel to call an expert witness on your behalf?
Because I don't trust none of them.
You mean you don't trust them to disagree with Dr. Rogerson? All that you are saying, all this is lies, isn't it? Lies.
No, you listen to me. Listen to me proper. Because what I'm saying is the truth. I don't know about no law. What good has the law done me or anyone else like me, ever? The laws and everything in this country is for nice, right people with nice, white faces. Anything else, anything different you don't want to know. Anything else is up shit creek. Okay? Well, that's all. That's all.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Nor I, Your Honour.
Mr. Denver, I hope you realize that I've exercised great forbearance in dealing with you, expressing yourself as you have. And for your information, the law in this country deals with all citizens equally, irrespective of their colour and creed. You may go back to the dock.
I call the defendant Agnes Grace Lyle.
TV lawyers.
Miss Lyle, you were born in St. Lucia and came to join your parents here in Britain in 1960 when you were 10.
That's it.
And when your father died 4 years later, you spent 2 years in the care of the local authority.
I was fostered, yes.
Was that a happy experience?
No, I'm sorry to say.
I'm sorry, Miss Lyle. Could you speak up, please?
No.
Then for 3 years you lived as the common law wife of one of your father's friends, by whom you had your child, Ashley?
Yes. We agreed to separate. The child went to his grandmama while I trained as a nurse, state enrolled.
Will you now tell the jury how you came to object to the decision of the Fulchester Education Department to place your son Ashley in a school for the educationally subnormal?
Well, before he started school.
Before he was 5 1/2?
Yes. He was no different from any other boy with his grandmama. He was the best she had. She's minded a lot of kids. He give them songs and stories and Bible readings and so on.
This is all in the patois?
Mostly. Ashley's English was very slow when he started school. The other kids kept teasing him, making fun of his talk.
So naturally he didn't like school much. Did you talk to his teachers about this?
I complained, but they wouldn't listen. They did nothing for a year. Then they said, maybe he needs a special school. So I thought, okay, teacher knows best. But they never really explained what special school was.
And this was in December 1974? Did you not meet the medical officer or the psychologist who gave him an intelligence test at this time?
I couldn't go. I was working.
Oh, I see. Well, Ashley was transferred to Mill Heath ESN school, was he not?
Yes, but I didn't know it was going to be one little test and my boy branded for life, or I'd never have agreed.
Well, how do you mean, brand?
I mean just that. As soon as he started this special school, the kids in the street, his own friends and relations even started teasing him, saying he was silly, soft in the brains and so on. Also, he started calling them names back and got into fights. Every morning he was crying not to go to this special school, keeping home whenever he could.
Did you speak to his teachers?
Yes, every week. I asked for him to be put back to normal school, but they wouldn't listen. They'd made up their minds, that was that. So I made up my mind to keep him at home.
You didn't think he was educationally subnormal?
I knew he wasn't. At home, he played and talked, showed interest in all kinds of things. He was like nice to have around the place.
Was it about this time you met the accused, Jake Denver?
Yes.
He thought you were in the right about your son, didn't he? Was it your idea or his to keep Ashley at home?
Mine. I started leaving him with his grandmama again while I was out working.
Yes. And when the education authorities served you with a school attendance order in April 1975, you appealed?
Yes, I argued with them again, but they wouldn't listen. And if they wouldn't, I wouldn't. I can be stubborn, too.
Did the education authority not advise you that you had a further right of appeal to the Minister of Education?
I don't remember them saying so.
Well, in September 1975, the authorities applied for and were granted a supervision order, and Mr. Farah became your social worker. How did you feel about that?
I have nothing against Mr. Farah, but it brought back bad memories for me. I want something better for my children than I had. And here's my first boy being pushed under right at the start.
You and Ashley went to live with Denver at this time. Were you pleased about that?
Yes, it made a difference to have a nice place. It was something to fight for and someone to fight with. Jakes was good with the boy. Really good.
Well, now, let's move on to the events of the 12th and 13th of March, the day the alleged offences are said to have taken place. Tell us, please, in your own words, exactly what happened.
Well, it all happened as Jake said. The boy ran away and we kept him because they were doing him harm. Ashley ain't subnormal. But he will be if they have their ways. He'll give up trying and be just what they want him to be.
Well, Miss Lyle, you say it all happened as Denver said.
Yes.
Well, I'm sure. You and your lover have agreed on the most convenient lie. Isn't that right?
I don't lie.
You lied to Mr. Farah. Are you lying to the jury now?
No.
You knew you were breaking the law by keeping the boy in your flat, didn't you?
I didn't think about it.
Didn't think about it? You warned your accomplice, Denver, about the police, didn't you?
Mr. Farah bullied me. I didn't know what I was saying.
You knew enough to use patois so that Mr. Farah wouldn't understand, isn't that right?
Me and Jake talk it sometimes.
You thought you were crafty enough to escape prosecution, didn't you?
I never thought about it.
Miss Lyle, are you a good mother?
I try to be a good mother.
Does a good mother drag her disturbed child into court to testify on her behalf?
Not if she don't have to.
Does a good mother isolate her son? Make him something to be argued over, pointed at?
If she got no other choice.
Dr. Rogerson and Mr. Farah are not unreasonable people. On the contrary, it is you and Denver they find unreasonable.
They haven't been shoved around for the last 3 years. They never knew Ashley before all this. He was a happy little boy.
Mrs. Forrest? Very well. You may return to the dock.
Your Honor, the boy, Ashley Lyle.
Ashley Lyle, please.
Ashley, you're un bon petit garçon.
Oui, maman.
I think we might dispense with some of the formalities. The boy might have a chair. Oh, come along. Something to raise him up.
I think we should have some form of oath, Your Honor. The boy is a Catholic.
Show him the testament. Now, Ashley, there's nothing to worry about. How old are you?
Dites-non, laisse aveu connaître.
You must be quiet. You really must.
I was just telling him to answer, sir.
Very well. How old are you, Ashley?
9.
Do you know what that book is?
Jesus book.
Well done. Do you know what truth is?
No lies.
Good. And what does Jesus think of little boys who tell lies?
He called him wicked.
Now, I want you to put your hand on Jesus' book and promise that you won't tell any lies here today.
I promise.
Good. Now, that lady and that gentleman there, they're going to ask you some questions, and I want you to tell the truth as you've promised. Do you understand?
Ashley, ou pas besoin un peu? Moi, juste pour aider ou répondre ces questions?
I had no idea you were such a linguist, Mrs. Forrest.
Well, I thought the odd phrase to set the boy at ease, Your Honor.
You seem to have amused him, at least. Please continue. In English, please.
Ashley, do you go to Grange House School? Do you like the school? So you don't like it. How much do you dislike it? Do you hate it? Do you like it at home with your mamma?
Yes, please.
And your Uncle Jack?
Yes.
Do you remember the day your mamma and your Uncle Jack came to see you at Grange House and you went away in the van? Did you climb through Dr. Rogerson's window and hide in the van? Were your mamma and Uncle Jack in the room when you did that? Now, Ashley, this is very important. Did your mamma or Uncle Jack tell you to do that?
No.
Well, why did you do it?
I don't know. Don't like school.
Did your mamma and Uncle Jack know you were in the van when they drove back to Fulchester?
I don't know. I jumped up.
When did you jump up?
Driving along.
Were your mamma and Uncle Jack surprised? Were they angry or upset?
Mama cried.
Did they take you back to Uncle Jack's flat? Did you want to go?
Yes.
Did your Uncle Jack smack you when you were in the flat?
When I was bad.
Oh, when you were naughty. Did you cry? Did they ever smack you at school?
Sometimes.
Did Mr. Farah come and take you back to Grange House the next day? Did you want to go?
No, I hate this school.
Thank you, Ashley. My friend here will ask you a few more questions.
Tell me, Ashley, do you have some friends at Grange House School? Oh, that's nice. Do you play games and have fun with them sometimes? Was it fun hiding in your Uncle Jack's van? Did anyone see you get into the van? How did you know where the van was?
Uncle showed me.
Your uncle showed you? Through the window? Was the window open?
Little.
I see. Did your uncle say anything about presents and sweets? What did he say?
He promised me presents.
He promised you presents. That day?
At home.
That day or some other day?
I don't know.
Did you hide in the van because you wanted presents?
I don't know.
But your uncle did show you the van, didn't he? And he did promise you presents? And the next thing you did was to hide in the van?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Ashley.
Yes, you've been very helpful, Ashley. And I want Dr. Rogerson to give you a special present for Christmas when you get back to school as a reward. Off you go now. Members of the jury, there are two charges in the indictment and two defendants. Firstly, the accused, Jacques Denver, is charged with stealing or unlawfully taking away Ashley Lyle by force, with intent to deprive his lawful guardians, the Fulchester County Council, of the physical custody of him. Now, force need not necessarily mean physical force. A command backed up by an implied threat of force would be sufficient. Secondly, the accused, Agnes Grace Lyle, is charged with harbouring her son. Now, harbouring means either detaining her son or helping in his detention, knowing him to have been unlawfully taken. Now, under the Offences Against the Person Act of 1861, a mother may not be charged with stealing her child. Now, if after deliberation you find that Denver did take the boy as alleged, you must then decide whether the accused stole or harboured the boy because they felt him to be in imminent danger. In this instance, that means psychological danger, some serious threat to his mental development. Now, it matters not whether the defendants were mistaken in that belief, provided it was based on reasonable grounds and was one which they honestly held. Now, if you find that they held that honest belief, you will return a verdict of not guilty. Now, you must consider the two charges separately, but in practice, you may find it not possible to separate the defendants in your deliberations. They have admitted to acting in unison. But remember, it's not up to the defendants to prove their innocence. The prosecution must prove their guilt, and you must be satisfied that it's been proved, and proved beyond all reasonable doubt. Will you now please retire and consider your verdict?
All stand.
Will the foreman please stand? Just answer this question, yes or no. Have you reached verdicts on which at least 10 of you are agreed?
Yes.
On the first count, do you find the accused Jacques Denver guilty or not guilty of child stealing?
Not guilty.
On the second count, do you find the accused Agnes Lyle guilty or not guilty of harbouring a child?
Not guilty.
Very well, you are free to go. But I do hope that you'll try and understand that Mr. Farah and Dr. Rogerson are genuinely trying to do the best for Ashley.
The cases in Fulchester are fictitious. You can join us again when our cameras return to bring you another leading case in the Crown Court.